So the largest left-wing political streamer, Hasan Piker, was recently victim to a 3-hour-long content nuke by his former podcast host, Ethan Klein. Now, one of the main themes of that content nuke is that Hasan has a very radical audience. Now, that kind of goes without saying. I don't know if we needed a content nuke to prove that, but I guess it hammered it home for a lot of people. The video is doing very well. It has a lot of views. But I really wanted to go into, is it good to have an audience this radical? Because are you now put into a box where you can only say things that you know they'll agree with? It's almost like there's a word for this. Is it like do they call it an echo chamber or something? I don't know. Well, recently, Anna Kasparian, who actually worked at the network that Hasan used to work at before he became a streamer, the Young Turks, went on to say that Hasan is actually terrified of his audience, and this video is worth watching.
The reason why it's pure projection when someone like Anna says like Hasan is a slave to his audience, or Epstein, Sexpestiny, Hasan is audience captured. Hasan is audience captured. When they say stuff like this, that's actually projection.
Right.
And I have a specific example of someone that worked here that has said something very similar to her.
Oh, interesting. Okay, It can't be your nephew because he has no self-awareness. But anyway.
Okay, that's a nice little moment from her, but I will say, I think to some extent, every person who makes content is captured by their audience to some level. If you're a gaming channel and all of a sudden you pivot to making 5-star dishes, you become a cook. People who like your gaming are not going to watch your cooking. That's pretty obvious. I think the word slave is very intentional, though. When someone says you're a slave to your audience, I think they specifically mean that they will turn on you and cannibalize you if you say something that they don't like. Whereas, let's say you go from cooking to gaming or vice versa, those people are just going to stop watching and peacefully exit. If you have a radical audience and you are a slave, they will revolt and they will eat you alive. They will cancel you. They will try to make your life a living hell. And that's not what you want. That's no bueno. If you're a streamer, you don't want your audience to hate you. I think that's kind of goes without saying, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it had to be said for certain people.
Wait, let me continue with the rest of her statement.
Like, oh, I don't like that, he left the Young Turks and was able to reach levels of success on his own. It's not about that, right? It's not about that. It's actually because that person is like audience captured, and that's the reason why he's advocating for the things.
Now, I don't know the personal grudges that he's getting into. Like if Anna Kasparian is sour grapes because he's now more successful than her, and honestly, maybe more successful than the Young Turks as an entire platform. I don't know. But regardless, her point still stands. So even if he wants to say, you fell off, you're old news, you're washed up, I'm the new guy in town with more viewers, the facts remain the same.
That he's advocating for. He must not simply believe the things that he's saying. Like,
so, it looks like Anna Kasparian feels sorry for Hasan because he is a slave to his audience. I gotta say, they really don't seem to like each other very much. But honestly, Anna Kasparian has a good point with this one. Alright, here's a quick TLDR on the situation. A contributor for the Young Turks, Francesca, did what Anna describes as a hatchet job on Chank, sparking Anna Kasparian to call her out, as well as other people that have worked for the network, and exploited it for clout to build their own careers. And
well, this happens truly all the time in this industry, so it doesn't shock me that this is something that took place. Like, you get on a platform, you build a name for yourself, and when you see a good chance to exit and do your own thing, you take the exit. I mean, unfortunately, that is kind of how it works. You look at Brett Cooper's situation. She got all the fame that she really wanted and then started her own channel, left the Daily Wire, so it's not a new thing. I think specifically with Hasan, though, tying it back to audience capture, what really was a moment that showed me truly how fucking shackled this guy is was when that girl in Australia went up to him and said, "No, you can't drink Coke, it's boycott." One of his fans ran up to him as he was IRL streaming and demanded that he doesn't drink Coca-Cola because the Coke company is like pro-Israel or something. How fucking pathetic must it be to have an audience that says you can't drink Coca-Cola because it's unethical? That's not the audience that you really want to have. I mean, listen, he's making a shitload of money. I doubt he cares that much. But these people are very dysfunctional. If you had a 500-piece puzzle and got 499 of them perfectly arranged, there's one piece left, but that piece had a factory defect to where it doesn't complete the puzzle. That one is a Hasan fan.
Brand, which provoked a person on Twitter to say, "At least she's doing work. Weren't you also jealous of Hasan?" Well, Anna Kasparian didn't like that comment very much and ended up responding saying, "Hasan is a slave to his audience. I've never seen a man more terrified of people who watch his streams. I would never be jealous of that." Which honestly is a pretty fair statement. If you've ever watched Hasan beyond a clip chimp or two, you will quickly notice Hasan is actually terrified of his audience. Sure, he'll yell at the odd person that disagrees with him every now and then, but when the majority start to have an opinion that's slightly different than his, you will see exactly what she's talking about. Anyway, I guess Hasan got word of this small comment on Twitter and decided to have a rant about it on stream. Check this out.
How do you deal with like the sickening feeling that accompanies all this, especially with Palestine? Chatters, I've told you this already. Being a leftist is being on the right side of history, being correct but too early.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good thinking there. So being a leftist is being right, but not yet. You could just say that. That's a really nice phrase there. That's some good sloganism. I can just use that for like anything. If I want to hire someone and pay them $0 and like I can just lie to them, I'll be like, yeah, working for me is doing the hard work, knowing you're gonna be a millionaire one day, but just keep working for me for free for like unlimited infinity time. So I can just yield all the benefits of your work and not pay you. That's awesome, dude. The promise of being correct will come as long as you just continue to believe the things that come out of my mouth. That's awesome. I mean, that's great. So it's kind of just like saying that all the facts and stuff in certain issues where you're objectively provably wrong, you can ignore that because eventually you'll be right. It's genius. That's not a policy thing and not related to actual politics. It's a mindset thing. But even in the mindset, it's fucking radical, dude. It's just like, trust me, bro. That's what he's doing.
And also constantly getting yelled at.
It must be so hard. It must be so hard to be constantly getting yelled at when you're in a chat of like, what, 50,000 people who unanimously agree with your radical politics? Yeah, dude. The people that are yelling at you are actually normal, well-adjusted people, and the yelling that takes place is something like one of your chatter's family members saying like, hey, it's probably not good for you to yell at your father when he's drinking a Coke in the living room watching a football game. You shouldn't tell your dad that he supports genocide because he's just laid up on the couch drinking a Coke. That's what the being yelled at that he's talking about is.
Constantly engaging in constantly talking about things that are directly at odds with the powers that with the pre-existing hierarchy. You're
Right.
gonna lose a lot.
You are.
Okay.
This is crazy. This is radical talking points. Like he's saying that like, yeah, it's going to cost you your social life. It's going to cost you your connections. It's going to cost you your reputation, but it's worth it because eventually you'll be right vaguely because I said so. It is fucking unbelievable. Do not cut off people that are important to you because Hasan said so. That's insane. What do you gain from that? More time with him? More hours on his stream? Mindlessly wasting your life? Is that a good value proposition? I don't think it is. Hang out with your friends that say slurs. Fuck what he says, dude. Who cares? Have friends who think differently than you. Have family that thinks different than you. Be a normal fucking person. Don't be the factory defect puzzle piece. This guy literally profits off you being a fucking weirdo and an inept loser. He makes money every time you're in his chat being fed these lies that you should ruin your life.
That's it. You're gonna lose a lot. So get ready for it. But just, as long as you know that your moral compass is correct and you don't lose yourself to the whims of I don't know.
The moral compass that has been constructed by the web of lies this guy parrots every time he boots up stream, by the way. There is no moral compass. It's his words. As long as you hold my words as unquestionable truth, then you'll be good. That you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Also, we're at the top of the hour. It's time for the ad break. Isn't that what he says?
Wanting a tiny bit of victory in the short term, you just have to keep putting your best foot forward.
What does any of this mean? What does any of this mean? Can we pause for a second? This is so vague. Just keep putting your best foot forward. How? In what practice? Can we get like a practical example of how this applies? In what way? How?
Doing the right thing and you're doing right by others. That's it. Like Jank and Anna lol. I mean, I've talked about this a lot. Reactionary thought is alluring. So when you start training your brain to believe things from a reactionary point of view, you start basically it's It's the opposite of muscle training, right?
He says if you start believing things from a reactionary point of view, as if that's not what A, he does, and B, all of his fans do. All of your fans are reactionary to exactly the talking points that you put out, which are your reactionary talking points that you've received from tabloids. It cannot get more hypocritical and more ironic than this. You worked at the Young Turks. Everything you know about this biz and this way of delivering news as like a talking head has been learned from the people you are now criticizing. Are you fucking kidding me? It's insane, the irony here. I mean, it really is.
If you don't actually constantly work out, you're inevitably going to become a weaker person. Your muscles are going to go away and then maybe even be replaced with fat. Okay? That's how I feel about critical thinking. If you engage in critical thinking and you constantly do it and you apply it all the time, okay, you cause that muscle not to atrophy.
He actively, by the way, is against critical thinking. And I know this because he refused to watch a video that would cause him to critically think on stream. The content nuke against him. He says, I'm not going to watch that. Okay, wouldn't critical thinking be looking at varying opinions and perspectives and deciding which one you agree with more after analyzing each of them and picking the parts? Like, he's against doing this. He literally is. He doesn't like to debate people. He watches the same outlets produce the same talking points. There is no critical thinking. He doesn't do it. None of his chat does it either. All of his chat take what he says as gospel. They don't cross-reference this with other things that especially contradict it. It is fucking crazy. They're spoon-fed exactly what to believe. There's no critical thinking.
Reactionary thinking, on the other hand, is atrophy, and it slowly creeps in.
Is Hasan seriously trying to act like Anna and Cenk are reactionary, but he isn't? Ah, yes. Hasan is quite known for his stoicism and his well-thought-out political commentary. Bro, essentially all you do is reactionary garbage. In fact, you have literally built your career off of doing that. Trying to deny this or sidestep that is just not gonna happen, dude. If you actually think you aren't reactionary, then you're just insane. You literally learned your playbook from working at the network, dude. If you looked up reactionary in the dictionary, your picture would be right there, Hasan.
A freeze that it meant for the tariffs for Canada and Mexico.
There are a lot of people who act like they're doing the world a favor by publicly espousing progressive politics, but the moment it affects them personally, they go full-blown reactionary because they now actually address their own biases. They just said everything you wanted them to say. Yeah, and I think that is actually part of the reason why it's pure projection when, like, Anna or other people will say, like, Hasan is totally captive. He's a slave to his audience. Am I radicalizing my audience because I'm...
Yes, literally yes. I'm so curious what he has to say after this.
Socialist who loves undermining American empire by doing acts of terror, and I'm actually
okay
radicalizing my audience.
Did he just fucking hit the nail on the head, like by accident, in like a straw man way? Am I doing the straw man? Kind of, actually.
Or is it actually that I'm a captive to my audience? I'm a slave to my audience, and I have to portray my point of view. Maybe it's neither.
Aren't both of those true? Oh, he goes neither. When it's actually both. That's so funny. Oh man, this donkey is something else, dude. I gotta tell you, it is shocking that I look every now and then on Twitch for like a gaming stream and he's in like the tab of like stuff you may want to watch, and it's not anything anyone wants to watch. It's just who has the most viewers. And I see this motherfucker and he's getting some views, I will say. Good for him for getting the views. But when I think about what that actually means, like the number on the screen, how many people that is and what they're being fed, it is scary. It's some Halloween level scary stuff. But at the end of the day, he's not a slave to his audience, right? Like he can surely espouse an opinion that diverges from what the people who are radicalized into such a way that any other opinion they probably would label as fascism or Nazism. He can do that, right? Like he can label him, like he could give any of those opinions that his audience would label him for Nazi. No, sure, right? Definitely, right?
Either of those things. Maybe these are genuine opinions that I hold, and I'm uncompromising and routinely yell at my own audience all the time when they say some silly shit. When someone like Anna says like Hasan is a slave to his audience, or Destiny used to say this all the time too, Epstiny, Sexpestiny, Hasan is audience captured. Hasan is audience captured. when they say stuff like this, it's actually projection. It's no different than saying you're virtue signaling, right?
Hasan.
It is a lot different. So virtue signaling is saying something that you don't believe to score cookie points with a group of people for either attention, for money, for approval. That's one thing. You know, virtue signaling is basically lying. And then being a slave to your audience is just saying what they want you to say because you know that you won't get views or approval otherwise. You can virtue signal without being a slave to your audience. You can't be a slave to your audience and not virtue signal. A square is a rectangle is not a square. It's the same thing.
You are completely capable of being a slave to your audience and still radicalizing them. You can even yell at them all the time and still be those things. I know this because you do this day in, day out, all the time. But isn't it funny how Hasan always seems to attach criticism to destiny? It's just over and over again, and ever since the whole sex pest thing came out, like he's just doubling down and tripling down on it, especially when he gets criticized. It's like his go-to get out of jail free card or something. I mean, come on, think about it. Destiny is clearly living in this guy's head rent-free. But anyway, let me break this down for you. When a majority of your community has a serious disagreement with something you say, you obfuscate or try to change what you're saying to align with them. And when a single person goes astray, you roast them in front of chat. And as far as...
So a way that he does this, the content nuke highlighted, which I think is a very interesting tactic. I mean, I don't know if it works, but the reality is he got called out for it, and I'm going to echo the call out. It is when he will bring up a larger issue to distract from the actual criticism being made against him. So if someone is leveraging a valid criticism against him, he can just be like, well, okay, well, forget all that. There are bigger problems. There's a war going on. Ignore what's happening with me. There's bigger problems. This is sort of like there's children starving in Africa, but your mom would say to you if you're not hungry for dinner. It's like, okay, that is true. There are children starving in Africa, but there's also, you know, I don't want to eat this food, but I'm still hungry. You know, it's just like, it doesn't actually do anything. Like if your mom made a piece of shit meal, low key, you know, who cares if there's children starving in Africa? I'm starving and I don't want to eat that. You know, what he's doing is just the same shit. It's like, ignore the valid criticism and instead diverge by bringing up something that has nothing to do with what we're talking about to, you know, just change the subject.
Is you radicalizing your audience when you try to normalize a Houthi pirate or say America deserved 9/11 or some absurd shit. What do you think happens, dude? You are inching them down the road of your absurd line of thinking. If you don't think that's radicalizing someone, then I think you just don't understand what that means. So yes, Hasan, you are audience captured. You are a slave to your audience and you are radicalizing them.
What's even crazier is there was a large push in 2020 to acknowledge the existence of the alt-right pipeline on YouTube through like political videos like PewDiePie to Ben Shapiro to Nazi content. But while people would bring this up, they would completely neglect the fact that it also goes the exact same way with the same level of intensity. And Hasan is like one of the largest figures on that extreme opposite. It's crazy to me. Like, can you look in the mirror and not tell a radical is also a radical no matter the side that they're on? It's mind-blowing. Oh yeah, man, those Ben Shapiro videos are really churning out Nazis. Meanwhile, I'm here on Zoom or Discord with a guy who's like hijacked boats in the middle of a war and like held people hostage. Yeah, that's cool, you know, that's awesome. I don't think this guy should be deplatformed, and if he does, you know, maybe there's an argument to be made there. I haven't seen enough clips of him, honestly. Like, I've seen a lot of clips, but not enough for the amount of time he's been live. I've seen probably less than 0.00001% of all his content, but I'm generally against deplatforming. I think the thing is, when someone like this has a platform and it's that big, they need to be constantly scrutinized, especially when they're just spouting insane shit like he is. And he does get called out a lot, but somehow I still don't feel like it's enough.
You're coming to the conclusion that the values that I'm espousing are virtuous, but I simply cannot truly mean it. I must be doing it for some cynical reason. Because if you were in that similar predicament, you'd be doing it for a cynical reason. As a matter of fact, maybe you are actually advocating for the things that you're advocating for some cynical reason right now. That's all this is.
So even if you're doing this because you don't like or maybe don't care about the $500,000 you're making a month, like let's say that's not the reason you're doing this, because maybe it's not. Like maybe you are deep down a socialist and want, you know, major reform. Like this is why you started the Twitch channel. Okay, I'll give you that. I don't believe that the disgusting amount of money you're making doesn't have anything to do with it, you know, and I don't think it's my fault, because if I was in your shoes, I'd be doing it for the money. I don't think that that's like a reflection of me, to be honest. Like I don't think that's a reflection of anybody. You don't think anyone would take your job to sit in front of a mic, say radical dog shit, and get paid disgusting amounts of money? I don't think so. But what I do think is it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. Whether you believe it or not, whether you're doing it for the money or not, or you believe it deep down in your heart, the outcome is the same for the mass amount of people. For the most people, you are making people radical, and that's what I care about. I don't care if you believe it or not. If you're LARPing as a radical or if you actually are one, makes no difference to me when the outcome's the exact same.
And I think for a lot of people, it truly stems from personal vendettas. It stems from personal insecurities. And I think people, maybe I'm like a little too autistic. Okay? But for me, I care about your output more than the personal back and forth that we have. There are plenty of content creators who have treated me not so great. And I'm always going to be gracious until it gets to a point where they're just like so overtly hostile that they are deliberately playing the role. Anyway, my point was
Very funny and not true of him to say that when his entire audience, while Ethan was on a call with him during a stream, was in chat basically saying that Ethan Klein is Hitler. And they were spamming messages implying that he is in some way supportive of mass death and is a heartless, disgusting genocide supporter, etc. I just don't think that for you, you know, you're being gracious. I just don't think that's true. I think if you truly were gracious, we wouldn't have that content nuke. I mean, you know, I don't know what Ethan's goal was with that entirely. Who knows? But the point is, I don't think you were being fully gracious there, and I do think what you're saying right now is not true. That matters. Anyway, that's basically the meat and potatoes of this video. Just kind of wanted to talk about this because it's kind of relevant right now. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. I'll link the video down below so you can watch the rest for yourself. See you guys all later. Peace.